Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Llewellyn, and I'm so grateful to all of you who are here. I'm in Colorado, so it's a little early in the morning. I was traveling with my family all day yesterday, so I think I've had enough coffee though that this is going to be coherent, and this is going to be the quickest amount of time that I've ever talked about this topic in particular. So we are going to be covering Seance 101. Oh, hey, Kelsey, so good to see you. Hi, everyone. Okay, so very first thing, because this is such a short talk, I'm not doing slides, but I did just in the chat, I put a link to a Google Drive doc that has a little outline for you all to refer to later. It has all the information on how to get in touch with me. So I am Sterling Moon. I am obviously an author with Llewellyn, gratefully with Llewellyn. I wrote a book called Talking to Spirits, a modern medium's practical advice for spirit communication. I am a full-time medium, tarot reader, folk magician, podcaster, and educator on the mystical and strange. I had a background of working with survivors and victims of crime for 20 years. And at about the 10-year mark of that, I started this funny little business with, just starting by reading tarot cards, which I had done since the 90s. And as I evolved and grew, I started to realize, wait a minute, I am sensitive to spirits. I've got a knack for talking with spirits. And the rest of the story goes from there. So, seances. Normally, this is not something that I like to talk about except with my students that I tend to be working with one-on-one. But as somebody mentioned early in the chat, there's a bunch of garbage out there as it relates to what seances really are. And also, too, there's a lack of information, just basic information about how to do it safely. I am guessing that I have some spooky people who are watching this and people who probably started out just messing around and finding out, as the saying goes. And the saying goes a little bit differently, but and so I also started to realize that there's a need to teach this in almost a way of like harm reduction, right? That if you're gonna there's a contingent of people out in the world who they are interested in seances, they're gonna try them, and maybe it's better to have a little bit of information about how to do it safely, which is what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so I am not, it's impossible for me to gauge the, of course I see some friendly faces in the chat here, but well, I was going to say it's impossible for me to gauge what everybody's experience is. So why don't, for, those of you who are maybe, feel comfortable engaging in the chat, let me know if you have a current spirit communication practice, if you're brand new, because that'll help me to know how to guide our brief conversation here today. But again, so the focus of today is going to be just a few little tips for having safe and supportive seances. Okay, so we have somebody who's brand new, somebody with current practice, more brand new. Okay, cool. All right. So the one thing I will tell for everyone, regardless of what your experience level is that the effort that you put into your setup and your closeout with spirit communication is going to make all the difference in both the effects that you have and also your safety. So when we talk about spirit communication and seances, we can communicate with spirits one-on-one. And okay, thank you so much. Lots of experienced tarot readers, some intermediate folks, some brand new folks. Okay, very cool. Thank you all. That's really, really helpful for me. So many of us, we communicate with spirits kind of like unconsciously, or like as part in a very casual way. For those of us who have, we have somebody who lives in it, has a house full of spirits. I also have a house full of spirits. I could even share a funny story from this morning if I end up having time. So for some of us, sometimes we live in an environment where we know that someone is there, and we kind of need to it's just that, hey, would you maybe not turn on the TV? and startle me, like, hey, would you maybe not mess with the burners? That would be super cool. Would you maybe not bother us when like we're sleeping at night? Sometimes that's the kind of casual spirit communication we have when we are living in an active space. Sometimes for a lot of us, we have loved ones who've passed on. And sometimes we just get that feeling that they're there with us. And we'll just say, or maybe for me, my dad passed away when I was 22. So sometimes I might need to I'm just like, hey, Dad, if you're around, I could really use your support today. Or, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. And if you could maybe just like run an interference for anything to help me out. So like nothing is going to get in my way of what I have to do today. A lot of us do that, particularly when we've experienced loss, right? But then, there's the kind of intentional spirit communication, which I do in my personal practice. It's what I help clients do, and it's what I love to do with students and with community. And seances for me is just practicing spirit communication, with one or more other people. It's spirit communication in a group. There's a lot of rich and controversial history with with seances. Obviously they had such a huge, there was such a huge boom of them at the height of the spiritualist movement, right? At the end of the 1800s. And that was, people had very powerful experiences, and it also caused some problems. There were people that were engaging in blatant fraud. There was, there's things like spirit slates, spirit photography, the ways that folks would like swallow cheesecloth and then frankly, it seems like just kind of vomiting it up in order to try to give the appearance of like producing ectoplasm. There was a lot of so I feel like seances really got a bit of a bad name from people, particularly, I'm going to put in air quotes mediums, because it's questionable whether of them many of them were, anything other than just kind of like stage magicians and, just trying to exploit people. But, I think that anyone who has an interest in the paranormal, and especially I think there's a lot of us who, we start out quite young, figuring out how to make a little a talking board out of the back of a the back of a notebook. That was certainly how I started out. And, and so it's the reasons that we might hold seance are we can, it's one, it can bring healing, right? Like being able to communicate with the spirits of those who have moved on. That can be tremendously healing. It can bring closure. It can help spirits maybe even wrap up their unfinished business, or the reasons that maybe they're still hanging around. It can help us to better understand the environments that we are in, particularly those of us who are exploring places that have spirit activity or live in spaces that have spirit activity, right? And also, I mean, it can be fun. It can be a little spooky sometimes, but it's my experience that the energy that you bring into your seance is often going to dictate what you get back. There's a lot of different rabbit holes you can go down of thinking about when we put our attention towards this type of activity, can we actually manifest it? Are we maybe unconsciously creating what's called, thought forms or egregores? Something to look up for later is the Philip experiment. If you are not familiar with that one, it's from the 1970s. Put that one in maybe your little, put that in a Google search to look up once we're done here today. But for today, we're going to get right down to the nuts and bolts. If you end up getting my book, I would love it if you got my book. I keep joking that I basically wrote the stereo instruction manual for spirit communication, because I found that a lot of the information out there, there's that great, Buckland's Big Book of Spirit Communications, the big red one. I love that book. But a lot of the stuff that I was finding out there was often, it either felt very dated, or it also was very complicated and kind of rooted in those ancient, necromantic grimoires, and wasn't as accessible for people like me, who I just kind of want to I want a list of do this, do this, do this, and then there's lots of room for interpretation. So that's kind of how my teaching style is, and kind of how I do things. Okay. So as I mentioned before, the effort you put into the setup and closeout of your seance makes all the difference. Prior to your seance, here are some very important preliminary steps. Talk with your group. those of you who want to like get together to like have this experience, make sure you all agree on what it is that you want to seek out. The like the kind of joking example, but not totally joking example, is that if you have somebody who wants to like talk to their great granny, and you have somebody else who wants to like conjure the spirit of like some ancient god, the two of you might not be, that's pretty far apart. Like let's say like Midwestern Lutheran granny over here might not really want to like talk with whoever this big, big ancient spirit is, and vice versa. Have some kind of like a common goal. And if you're very far apart, see where you can compromise. Maybe you have two seances where you kind of like, you try out different ways, right? Get on the same page about the outcome that you hope to have, or the situation you want to seek out. Establishing roles and responsibilities is also very helpful. I find now the way that I hold seance is I don't like, back in the day, they were very dependent on like the medium who would be the channel for all of the information to come through. And I don't like that. I mean, just because I think that everybody has gifts, and I think it's important for everyone, and everybody's going to have different sensations, different experiences, and can bring different aspects of themselves to the party. So it can be very helpful to have somebody who's like the facilitator, is how I like to think of it. Somebody who can lead through some of the steps that I'm going to talk about here in a minute, like helping everybody to ground, casting a protected space. We'll talk about that again in a minute. Maybe somebody who, if you have a fairly large group, I personally don't like holding seance for groups that are more than like 10 people, just because I want to make sure that I'm able to keep a good eye on everyone. And so, play around with it, but maybe for your first time, don't jump into like having like a group of like 20 people, unless you all know each other super, super well. I still would recommend start small and then build up from there. But maybe there's one person who is kind of the emotional support, the person that kind of keeps an eye out to make sure that if anybody's having a hard time, because sometimes there are people who this will affect them. I have one, I'm thinking of like a student that I have who, the way that spirits like really communicate through her are through physical sensations and emotions. And so sometimes if something really sad or strong will come through, I'll watch her just kind of like, I've seen her kind of like crumple up, and she's fine, but she just will often need somebody to be like, hey, let's remember to take a couple of breaths. What are you feeling in your body? Let's talk it out. Let's see what's trying to communicate through you. And so it might be helpful to have somebody that's able to have that kind of support, right? So the next part is going to be setting your space. Now, I will say, we don't have time to go into the details today. It's possible to have, I mean, obviously, if you have the ability to have old school seances where you can like be sitting in a circle in a room, hands on the table, pinky to pinky, that is a really awesome and powerful experience. You can also hold seances virtually. They can use a little bit, a technique that I've used. I studied with a Swedish folk magician named Johannes Bjorn Gardbach, a practitioner of something called trolldom. And okay, and folks, I appreciate the conversation in the chat, but like it sounds like it might be getting a little bit distracting for some folks. And so, keep the conversation focused on what we're talking about here today. Okay, just so everybody's able to focus. All right, but I love that there's like different book recommendations and stuff that's coming through like that. That's really awesome. But one of the things that we use like in trolldom is mind rooms. So one of the things that you can do is like set up like a mind room that is a way, it's a mental space, it's an astral space that we can, even if we are all sitting together in our different rooms all across the world, even, we can still find a place in the astral plane that we can come together to sit down pinky to pinky around a table. It's a really cool experience. Yeah, check out my book. I give you some tips on how to go ahead and do that. Okay, where did this go? All right, so if you are, though, regardless of whether you are in person or, just kind of like in your own personal space, set your space. So have things like, I find it helpful to always have a candle at a bare minimum. Clean, first of all, clean your space. Talk with any spirits of the space that you are in, letting them know that they are, that, kind of give a heads up to your household spirits and things like that, because that can, but one, it's just respectful. And that can also, like, that's especially important for virtual seances where you are, just giving a heads up to your, household spirits. Hey, we might be contacting some other folks. Could you maybe help to, hold the safety of the home? And also, I just don't want to upset you. But so that's something that's helpful. Have a glass of water and a candle, clean your space. So it feels spiritually clean, physically clean. You can also have some, tools like mirrors, scrying mirrors, EMF readers, so electromagnetic frequency readers. They are incredibly fallible. They're used a lot in like paranormal investigation, but they can also give you these spikes that will sometimes let you know when there is a change. There's people that believe that spirits can affect. They have their own electromagnetic frequency that they emanate, and so sometimes you'll see these spikes that will happen that kind of just let you know that something has changed and that maybe that a spirit has encountered your space. Dowsing rods are really good. Balloons or really light balls, those can be really fun. You have to make sure you've eliminated a draft, but they are easy to manipulate. And they can be, we don't need Great Graham judging our dust bunnies. Exactly. That's really good, Kelsey. So, but we can have, sometimes we can ask spirits like, hey, if you are here, can you go and nudge that balloon? That's a really, really fun one. My students always really like that. Cat balls, those are really fun ones that you can get on Amazon, and they're pretty cheap. They will light up, and another fun little tool that you can use. So once you have your space set, here are just like the quick and dirty steps of holding your seance. So if you are, again, we're going to take for granted that folks are able to be in a room together, or maybe that you have, you've established an astral plane mind room that that's where you are all sitting in virtually. The very first thing that you're going to want to do is establish your baseline. You need to be really, really conscious of how you are feeling, the environment that you are in, so you can notice if something changes. So doing a quick body scan without judgment, not trying to change it, noticing the quality of air and light and the temperature in the room that you are in, just taking notice of any taste that you are experiencing, any smells, how your emotions and your thoughts are feeling, just to, again, be really conscious of how you are so you can be better prepared to notice if something else comes in. The next step is really important, and that's being in a neutral place. Getting to a neutral place where you are, and for me, that's just taking 4 breaths, and I envision that all excess energy that my body, spirit, and mind do not need releases out into the universe far away. We want to be, when we are heightened, either super, super excited or really, really scared or really, really angry or whatever that is, it's like it's a muddy filter. And we're not going to be able to see, because spirits communicate in subtle ways, right? So do whatever you can to just come to a calm, objective, neutral state to the best of your ability. This is where it's helpful to have like a leader, a facilitator who can guide everybody through this process. I find it helpful for everyone to ground individually. Sometimes it's helpful for each person to state their dedication and their intentions. Like, I am here to contact the helpful spirits of this place, talk to any ancestors that are nearby or close to anybody that's here, whatever that is. It's also a good time, and I didn't put this in your handout, it's a good time to communicate your boundaries. I am open to, please send me images or smells or sounds. I do not want to be touched. I really don't like, personally, I don't like being touched. So I will say that at the very beginning. And so for every, again, whatever your grounding practice is, I have some suggestions in the book. Whether that's just like rooting down, taking some breaths. So everybody feels like they have something that they can come back to. If maybe they feel a little unmoored during the experience, having grounding that everybody can come back to on their own if needed. Casting a circle. We got a bunch of witches here, probably some good mediums, all that stuff. We don't need to go into the details, but whatever it looks like for you, casting, there's again, having a facilitator who guides everyone through the casting of a circle of protection. For me, I have a process of guiding my students or my clients through. We each envision, we do have our individual grounding, and then we each envision a band of light that's a circle of light that's surrounding the entire group. So if I'm working with 10 people, that's going to be, all of us, that 10 bands or 11 bands, including me, of light that are keeping this group safe. And again, maybe like setting the intentions as well, for this group, this is the experience that we want to have. These are the spirits that we want to contact. We only the spirits that are in line with our, collective highest good may enter. And there's lots of different layers and rooms for interpretation that you can bring into that as well. And then you call the spirits. I love, so I've got my big staff back here that I love using, where for me, when I open seance, I, bam, 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 with these 3 wraps of the staff, that is this portal is open, and we call to, the spirits of, whoever it is that we want to talk to. For me, that's how I like to open seance, with like a powerful noise. And then you call to the spirits, and then you see what happens. I will just tell you, sometimes nothing happens or not much happens. Not every seance is going to be like mind-blowing. Some of them, though, really, really are. And, again, so another thing for future study is, I think everybody who wants to practice spirit communication needs to also be working on psychic development. There's a saying that, not all psychics are mediums, but all mediums are psychic. So invest in learning about your clairsenses. Practice, like find exercises to help you strengthen them. Work on, especially those that are strong, work on maybe your ones that are not as strong. And again, give everybody the opportunity to participate and share what they are experiencing and see what happens. Now, the last 2 steps are very important. You got to close this sucker properly. And everybody's got to be all in. That's where things go awry for a lot of people, is they open up this space, they kind of open up the garage door, and then don't close it all the way. And so back to, I like that everybody likes their staff, right? It's like, it feels good to carry a big stick sometimes. I'm just saying. So closing the seance, for me, it's everyone that we called in, it's time to go back to where you were before, before we called you. You have to just, like, again, wait for those subtle feelings that you'll feel the release. You'll feel them leaving, and everybody has to agree that they're gone. And so, because sometimes they'll be like, sometimes there are spirits that are like, oh, here's somebody who maybe is a little scared, or somebody who I really like and I kind of want to hang around. Everybody's got to be, again, good communication is important in a seance. But then you close the portal. And so, bam, bam, bam. Oh, this is how we open. This is how we close, right? Then you release whatever you got to release your circle. Release that circle that you cast. Release individual grounding. Send back all energy that was offered to you. Call back all energy that you offered to others. Our time together is done, and so it is. And then lastly, cleansing, filling back up with something positive, and then protecting. That's like a 3-step cleansing and vibration raising process. We're real good about cleansing, and then sometimes we forget to fill up that empty space and then with something good, and then we forget to protect it. So whatever your cleansing practice is, even if it's something simple like going and washing your hands with intention. As I wash my hands, I release all psychic gunk, all spiritual gunk that, I may have picked up from this experience. I really think it's cool when you can have like a cleansing station for after your seance, like get everything all set up. So maybe you've got like some Florida water that's in a little spray bottle. Maybe your facilitator takes everyone through a cleansing visualization, and then you envision filling back up. I like to just even, imagine that like my body is filled with golden light. Again, something that feels positive. You can use maybe frankincense, incense. Everybody just, kind of do that fumigation. vibration raising, and then just envision that you are surrounded by like a beautiful circle of light. Again, cleanse, fill back up with something positive, and then protect it. And then you're done. So my dears, that is the quick and dirty of Seance 101. I'm going to set this. Let me see if I can paste the same thing. I created a little handout for you all, so you can have something to refer back to. If you would like to be able to keep up with me, my website is sterlingmoontarot.com. Signing up for my email list is super awesome because I've had some shenanigans with social media. I had my Instagram account that I'd had for 7 years deactivated after. I know a lot of us get plagued by those scam accounts. Remember, nobody will ever slide into your DMs wanting to offer you a reading. Don't ever fall for it. But it has all of my information, the name of my podcast, and I am also going to be offering a free mediumship challenge. It's called Month of Mediumship. It's kind of my kickoff to spooky season, which starts for me July 1st. I have a lot of really cool stuff coming up, and I'd love to see you all there. If there's we have 3 minutes. If anyone has like a quick question, I'd be happy to entertain that. Otherwise, I also would be happy to. Yep, Brenda, if you scroll up, there is let's see, it says, here's an outline for folks to refer. You know what, I'm just going to go ahead and pop this in again. There we go. All right. Well, I'll hang out here for, thank you, Kelsey. It's nice to see you. The biggest lesson I've learned from being a medium, oh goodness, it's sometimes that spirits are funny. Spirits are so funny sometimes. Like, I think that we expect everything to be like big and bad and scary, and because of movies and all the crap that's out there. And that's just not my case. Like, that's just not been my experience a lot of the time. I will also say that one of the things that I've learned is, sometimes when I was really new at this, I would try to reach out to, like, I had a situation with family that was really, really hard. And I just wanted to talk with my granddaddy. And I was like convinced that because granddaddy had been dead for a few years, that he would know exactly what to do, what to say, that he would have all the answers because he's dead. So he knows everything, right? And that ended up not being the case. I found that he was just as conflicted, just as like flummoxed about what to do with this situation as I was. And that was a real eye-opener that spirits are still who they are, at least for a while. They still have lessons and things that they are working on. Another lesson I've learned too is that there's a lot of like savior crap. Pardon me, I'm saying crap a lot this morning. Of folks who want to be able to, I'm gonna cross over all the spirits. I'm gonna save you. Sometimes, I'm just gonna put out there that we don't always know that no matter how experienced we get with this stuff, we never fully know what we're dealing with. And so I would just encourage you to just maybe do your seances, at least at the beginning, with more of just an observer's mind. I'm there to communicate. I'm here to observe. Unless you are like asked for help, you might not, there might be reasons that spirits are here that we can't comprehend right now. So there we go. Okay, so we're losing some. Well, I don't, Anna, you are here. Do we have time to hear a story about one of your house spirits running around this AM? I'll make it quick. Okay, Anna, you can cut me off when you have to. We lost internet this morning. It's been a big problem. I bought a hotspot before our family went on vacation because of this very reason. And so I come downstairs and I'm getting all set up. It's a little early. I'm a little tired. And I noticed that we don't have, the internet's not picking up. And I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? And all of a sudden I hear this click. I'm in my basement and we have a TV in the other room. I hear this click. And I go out into the other room, TV turned on its own. It doesn't do that. You have to like hit a button up high or hit a remote, and that's like sitting on a table. But the thing that I noticed was it said not connected. And right when I had heard that click was because I was wondering, gosh, is it something with my computer or is it down in the whole house? I have really cute spirits in this house. It's like a really it's been the perfect training ground for me. I think that that turned on as a way for them to tell me, "Sterling, it's not just you, it's down in the whole house." You know, that was my heads up to go get the hot spot and hurry. So that was my little experience from this morning. So, ooh, and I told that in a minute. I talk very fast. Okay, everyone. I hope you are having fun with LlewellynCon. I'd love to see you either on social media or through emails or through my month of mediumship, or if you want to learn with me more deeply, there's plenty of information on my website about how to do that and lots more coming. But finally, I just want to thank Llewellyn. Thank you so much for working with me as an author and for having me here for this event. This is awesome.